Okay. All right, this afternoon we're going to talk about gratitude. And so far we've talked about grace, self-effort, faith, and now gratitude. It's actually kind of a circle that goes around and around. Each one is connected to the other. And we'll start this afternoon with a little exercise for you. I want you to close your eyes. Think of 3 things that you're thankful for. Don't look at me. Just close your eyes and think of 3 things you're thankful for. Think of 3 people you're thankful for. Now think of 2 goals, big or small, it doesn't matter, that you'd like to achieve over the next month. Tell yourself you can. Tell yourself you can do anything. Picture your success. Smile, breathe, and open your eyes. Now, if we make this kind of practice, I save lots of quotes on gratitude because I think it's a really important part of our well-being and our being happy and content in this life. This is a life without thankfulness is devoid of love and passion. Hope without thankfulness is lacking in fine perception. Faith without thankfulness lacks strength and fortitude. Every virtue divorced from thankfulness is maimed and limps along the spiritual road. Being thankful and being grateful helps everything. It helps our whole personality, it helps our mental health, it helps our physical health, it helps every aspect of our life. It also gives a big boost to our spiritual life. Now, when we think we don't have anything, these are old statistics that I'm going to read you. 3 billion people live on less than $2.50 a day. 3 billion people. 1.3 billion live on less than $1.25 a day. Think how much we have. 783 million do not have access to clean water. We take it for granted. And now this statistic is so outdone it's not even funny. This one says 750,000 people are homeless in the US. Well, it's way more than that now. As we know, everywhere there are so many homeless people. And we tend to not look at how much we have to be grateful for. I mean, we all have homes, we have a roof over our heads, we get food every day, and sometimes when you're visiting Toronto Centre, you get more than enough food for 3 people. And it's all delicious. Actually, when we think of being thankful and having gratitude, we are thinking more of other people than of ourselves. And that it leads us, when we're grateful for everything we have, we feel rich, we feel like we can give, we feel like we have more than we need. And this helps our spiritual life, it helps everything. It leads to contentment for ourselves. And Martin Luther King and Gandhi both said, content men with a purpose and direction in the relative world are content in the belief of God will absolutely work miracles. And these are 2 men that did in the area of politics, and they did it peacefully, both of them. And they both maintain the attitude, to quote an AAC, the attitude of gratitude. You're supposed to maintain that. Contentment is also a side effect of self-surrender, a side effect of having deep faith. It's not a weak, contentment is not a weak thing. It's actually quite a strong emotion. We tend to think it's, as I had one person say, cows are content. Not really, they're just kind of tuned out and chewing grass. But contentment is often confused with complacency. And complacency is an entirely different thing. Contentment personifies the action in inaction, and inaction in action that Krishna talks about in the Gita. You can't have contentment if you are overrun with desires. You become content when the desires and the gratitude are in balance, and you actually feel more gratitude than desire. You're grateful for everything that God gives you. You have to be aware of what you're doing. You have to be aware of the actions that you're taking. When I say the action in inaction, and the inaction in action, that's the inaction in action we were talking about at lunch. When we do things, we have to be ready to attach with all the passion we can muster. And when our job is done, detach immediately. How can we bring this feeling of gratitude into our lives? By practicing it like everything else. That's what the little things, think of 3 things every day that you're grateful for. Instead of waking up and thinking, oh, I have to do this, think, now today, I'm going to be able to help my friend. Not, I have to take them to the plane. We just change our own attitude on how we view what we're doing and what we're thinking. And I have a whole list of sayings that I'm going to read to you because I think they're really good. Gratitude can transform common days into thanksgivings, turn routine jobs into joy, and change ordinary opportunities into blessings. This was an American that I never heard of called William Arthur Ward who said this. But the fact that many of these people that made these, what I consider very prescient quotes for us to think about, is that it is an important part of everyone's life. Give thanks for a little, and you'll find a lot. Blessed are those who can give without remembering and receive without forgetting. This is also another one of Swamiji's, backs up his statement. Be attached, but then be detached. Give without ever remembering that you gave something to someone. But when you receive something, never forget that that person helped you. Okay. Here's one from Buddha. Let us rise up and be thankful. For if we didn't learn a lot today, at least we learned a little. And if we didn't learn a little, at least we didn't get sick. And if we got sick, at least we didn't die. So let us be thankful. I think that's particularly apt right now with what we have gone through and I think are over with. No one is more impoverished than the one who has no gratitude. Gratitude is a currency that we can mint for ourselves and spend without bankruptcy. It takes nothing to be grateful for things. Just a little of your thought for others. That's all. Now, here's one from Oprah Winfrey, and we all know how much she has, right? Be thankful for what you have. You'll end up having more. If you concentrate on what you don't have, you will never, ever have enough. And to me, that also says the Vedantic thing of desires are unending. They're never satisfied. Never. You cannot satisfy worldly desires. The more you fulfill them, the more you want. We have to learn to appreciate every single moment of every day. And all that takes, as I say, is being aware of what we're thinking, making a conscious effort to think of the positive rather than the negative. If a negative thought comes up, think of the opposite. Oh, I feel like I don't want to see anyone today. Then you think, no, I'd really like to go out and see my friend. And if we think positively, we end up being much more unselfish and much more out of our small ego. I love Albert Einstein too. There are only two ways you can live your life. One is that nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. These are people who were so successful in their fields, in the worldly sense, and yet this is how they thought in their private lives. These things can inspire all of us to feel this gratitude for everything we're given. And yes, it all comes from the Lord. It's all part of grace, self-effort, and faith. But the more we practice this gratitude for every single thing that happens, the greater our faith becomes. Our self-effort is not so odious. It becomes a pleasure rather than, oh, it's something I have to do. So they all work together in improving our lives and raising our spirit, taking us up the spiral towards divinity. I think I told you that the other day. Swami Prabhupada, I'm getting confused where I talked. Swami Prabhupada said, you never, ever go backwards in spiritual life. You are always progressing upwards. However, it's not straight. It's a spiral. So it looks like you may fall back a little, but you're always higher than you were before. So you keep going up that spiral, and that is the greatness of the grace of God. Your self-effort is never wasted. It may lag a little here and there, but it is never wasted. You can't lose what you've got. And when you remember to be grateful and you have the faith that you are going upwards, it's harder to get discouraged and to be despondent. We all have low days. There's no doubt about that. We all have days when we think, I don't know how I'm going to get through this one. But if we consciously make the effort to call on our past efforts in our past, the things that holy people have told you, remember one thing and go over it. That will take you out of that despondency. Think about your guru, think about what our course said, think about anything think about a place you have been that you felt that overwhelming spirit when your heart wants to burst. If you've been to Ramakrishna's room or whatever temple it was, there's some place that happened, where the joy was so immense that you thought, this is really it. And it could have been a forest. It could have been something in nature, something immensely bigger than yourself, where you expand and your attitude expands. And that's what gratitude does for us. The more grateful we are, the more expansive our heart becomes. The more self-absorbed we become and careful of, we don't want to lose this or we don't want to lose that. Well, I don't know if I have time for that person. It's not necessarily money at all. It's your time, your company, if you volunteer, if you have extra time to volunteer and help some kids or something, but then you start closing in and saying, I don't have time for that. COVID made so many people, the lockdown made everyone stay inside. And the natural tendency I've noticed at the end of it is a little bit of hesitancy of going out again. It's not I don't want to, it's hesitant with a little fear. And that is something that we can manage, and we can change that. We can be careful, take all the precautions that are recommended, and then leave it up to God, whether we'll catch whatever's going around or not. I mean, everyone's got the flu sometime. I have allergies all the time. Shortly after the temple opened, oh dear goodness, I sneezed one night in Vespers. I emptied the temple. Everyone that was there went and got up and left. But it seriously is, I have terrible allergies. And no matter, but we all got to laughing about it because the other nuns who were there went, well, that's one way to get them all to leave on time. But as I said, this is something that's easy to do. I think it's not hard to be grateful. Just say thank you when someone helps you. Now, I know it's not necessarily, Swami Prabhupada and Swami Vivedishananda told me that's not our Indian way. We don't say thank you, especially when it's family. We don't say thank you. What is this? Thank you. And I said, well, it means we appreciate you. We love you. Oh. Americans say it too much. But it's not that difficult. It's actually just acknowledging your consideration for another person. There was a song that was sung all the time during Vietnam, and it was so incongruous and ironic. It was called A Wonderful World. And it was nothing but positive things. And here's bombs going off, everything happening, but one of the lines is, I see people greeting people, just saying hello. They're not saying hello, they're saying I love you. When you see people on the street, and I thought, yeah, that's what we need to practice. Okay. Because this is when another person whom I have no idea who it was. If you're really thankful, what do? This person says we share. When we're thankful, we feel we have all we need plus some. And so we share our good fortune, we share our happy times, we share our joy in life. Because we don't feel lacking. We don't feel a lack. And this is one that I think is really, do you all know Willie Nelson, the cowboy singer? Really awful. When I started counting my blessings, my whole life turned around, and he needed it too. This is another one that, I know it's quotes after quotes, but these things I think are all, they're for people that matter. Albert Schweitzer, who did so much work in Africa, free medical work in the old days, he says, at times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. And this is when I see when we all have our down times and is what I'm doing going to be fruitful? Is it the Lord's will? He was very religious and he did a lot of work, medical work in deprived areas of Africa during the 70s, I think, 60s and 70s. And I'm sure he got discouraged at times because they had so many illnesses and so many virulent things. And I thought, this is really interesting because it can be just a person or an occurrence that comes along and gives you the joy that you usually feel, and light it up again inside you, and you leave that person knowing that, yes, I can do it. And we so often just ignore them. We just take it for granted. We tend to take close family, close friends, totally for granted. We have expectations. Well, they're always going to be there for us. And we don't apply the thankfulness that we have them. It's more of I think when you lose a close family member, you lose a parent. I remember one of the gentleman who lived on our property for 30 years and took care of everything. He came down one day and he said, now he was in his 50s, and he said, I'm an orphan. And I looked at him and I said, what do you mean you're an orphan? He said, my father died, and now I don't have parents. And I thought, in one sense it's true, but how often do we think like that? And he said, I've been thinking, and I'm very, very grateful that I had them because they helped me. They helped me in sometimes negative ways and many times positive ways to be where I am today. But we take parents, we take children, we take for granted. We think, yeah, they're there. I can always ask my parents for this. Right now, so many kids are going back home and living at home because housing in Santa Barbara is so desperately expensive and unavailable. I mean, if I told you what rents are for one room in a house, and it's not a nice house, and they have to share the bathroom, and it's $1,200 a month. So they go back to their parents and kind of bunk up until they get a better job. And their parents are going, will they ever get on their own? But we know that those that family will be there. We know that. Even if we're having arguments, it's still your family. And you may have an argument, you may be on the outs, but when it comes down to the last second, they'll be there. Maybe not readily, maybe not gratefully or happily, but they'll be there. These are the people that we take for granted, and we should be even more grateful to them and express it. I think one of the things we tend to do is not express that they make me happy, that I'm glad they're in my life. It doesn't have to be thank you for anything, for a specific thing. It's just, I'm glad you're there in my life. Having you there makes me a richer person. And you don't have to say it. You can show it to them. You can include them. You'll find a way. You'll find a way to express the fact that you're grateful that you have everything that you have in your life. And your life will be much happier. Much, much happier. You'll be more content. You'll be ready for new adventures and for change. And all of life is nothing but change, and we have to be flexible because it is going to change no matter what. In spite of us, we can go, as they say, go with the flow, or we can stand there and fight every single change. And what do we accomplish by fighting the changes? We make ourselves miserable. It doesn't really matter to other people because we're the ones, once again, standing in our own way. As someone said, our mind is our greatest companion and our greatest enemy. And we have to choose which one it will be. Will it be our enemy or will it be our friend? That's basically what the whole series of talks are about. The control of our own minds and our own thoughts. Changing our way of looking at things, be it through grace, self-effort, faith, gratitude. Gratitude is a more practical, easily applied way of doing things. Faith is a little nebulous. It will grow, but it takes a little more effort. Self-effort, we have everything how to do it. And grace is. So I would say grace and faith are the more nebulous spiritual aspects of our journey to God. Self-effort and gratitude are the more practical, everyday parts of our journey. And as I say, gratitude is easy. Here's another, I think I have the whole thing. Well, this one. Okay. This is to begin, this is another quote, to begin bringing gratitude in your life. You can deliberately meditate on all the things in your own life that help you or give you pleasure. You can also write a gratitude diary, posting pictures and writing about the things you feel grateful for each day. The holidays are a great time to express your gratitude to friends and family by writing cards to them, handwritten, not email, and exchanging thoughtful personal gifts. Baking cookies for neighbors or sharing food with the poor are other ways to express appreciation for the abundance of food that we have in this country. Gratitude can lead to feelings of love, appreciation, generosity, compassion, which further open our hearts and help rewire our brains to fire in more positive ways. Now, I've never really thought about rewiring our brains, but that's exactly what when the scriptures say when we control the senses and the mind. We rewire, we set a new way. And these are all little things you can do if you need everyday reminders. Like I think I said Swami Swahananda was very good. I had a bad temper when I was young, a really bad temper, and I could fly off. And I said, Swami, how do you get over this? And he said, I had one too. Swami Pravrajika had one too. I felt so much better when I found out these men had these terrible tempers too. I felt maybe there's hope for me. But Swami Swahananda says, well, don't try and, he says, when you get angry, you can't control it because it's taken over your whole being. But just put a piece of paper, a little book, and every time you get angry, just put a tick down. Okay. And he says, and then count them after a week. Well, what happens is when you have to tick it off, you think about it. And as you think about it, you think, what made me do it? And after about 3 or 4 months, I didn't have many ticks in the book. When I first started, I had a whole bunch. So that's how we rewire our brains gently. He said, don't try and just, I'm not going to get angry. He said, you'll get angry because you're frustrated for saying you're not going to be angry. But we can do these things. And as I say, the one keeping a little diary or writing down 3 things each day that you're grateful for. We had some Jewish friends who used to invite us over for their Friday evening dinners. And at the table, we all had to say 4 things that were good that had happened that day or that week. Things that we were grateful for. And they've been having their children do this since they were tiny. And they would, when they said when they started, it was things that had happened at school that necessarily weren't good. And they said, no, we're not thinking about any of the bad things that happen. We're only thinking of the things that we can be thankful for. And that does change it slowly forms a new habit, a new way of thinking. And our lives are mostly based on habits and habitual behavior. We don't think about it, we just get into certain habits and they just keep repeating themselves. And we dig as I used to say, the ruts deeper in our brain. We make the samsaras more ensconced. But by gently changing habits, we can actually get rid of things and we can improve our entire life. We can improve our personality for other people, and we can feel more at peace with the world instead of looking at all the things that are wrong with it. Look at the things that are right. I've noticed I had stopped watching the news. I used to watch the news all the time. But now all I watch is the weather report. Because all they did was tell bad news. And the disasters were, I think it started with 9/11 for us. I mean, by the end of the 3rd day, we had all seen those planes going to the Twin Towers to the point where it didn't matter anymore. You had seen the same picture so often, it had lost its meaning. And then I noticed all the news was doing that. When the war in the Ukraine started, they kept showing the same picture over and over again. It wasn't new news coverage. It was repeating the really negative sections. Well, our news, local news, started having, they would report the news, and then at the end of every news session, they started a section which said, what's right with our community? And they started giving everything that people were doing to help each other. All the good things that were going. And you know, there are so many good people out in the world. They far outnumber the ones that are in the news all the time. Far outnumber them. We just don't hear about them. So we get this kind of heaviness that goes out, and you think, oh, people are really, they're not friendly, it's going to be dangerous. But the good people far outnumber. Most everyone you meet is a really good person. And people just seem to, and we can be, they seem to be I'll tell this story. We tend to get preconceived ideas about people we see when we walk down a street. We don't see them, we see our preconceived notion. Now there's a Catholic priest in Los Angeles named Father Boyle, and he has started this thing many years ago called Homeboy Industries. Homeboy Industries is, he went into the ghettos in Los Angeles and took the gang members and prisoners who were just let out of jail, from young men who had been covered in tattoos, really bad gang members, and he started giving them hope. He started giving them jobs, because it's impossible to get a job when you've been in that kind of situation. I heard him speak, and he says, well, the first industry I started was a plumbing industry, and that really failed. People didn't want felons in their house when they weren't home. But he started a bakery. Now he has gotten probably thousands of young men out of the gangs to the point where they're going around the United States and giving talks about how this helped, how just the fact that someone would believe in them and give them a job. And he had warring gangs in the bakery together. Once they started working with each other, they realized they were just the same people. So then he started offering them the opportunity to have the tattoos removed, because they were covered in them. I mean, all over their face, their arms, everything. And one of the boys, who was one of the homeboys, came along with him to give a talk, and he was a big black kid. He had had tattoos, he said, he didn't anymore. But he said, even at that point, he said, I go through the airport with Father Boyle, and some women automatically grab their purses and clutch them to their side. And he said, it hurts me that they're afraid of me. And I think, that's a more, that's the kind of reaction when we react with our preconceived notion, just on outward appearances. We hurt people, we don't help people. We're seeing the differences, we're not seeing the unity. So anytime we can encounter someone like this, I mean, I was really grateful to hear this talk, because, you're walking down those streets and you see some of these kids and you think, what's going to happen? Most of them are pretty nice, individually. I won't say what they're like when you get together, but it's one of those things we can the more we encounter and express thankfulness for being where we are and who we are, it's true, our hearts expand. And the hearts expanding includes more. They include more people, many different people. And it doesn't help them, it helps us. It helps us with finding our own divinity. And we can be grateful for them for being different. I mean, Swamiji said, we don't want a homogenized group. We don't want that. We want diversity. Because the unity is in diversity. It would be so boring if we were all exactly the same and all thought the same and all acted the same. Wouldn't that be a boring world? May as well be robots. But to have each one have their personalities and have their likes and dislikes, yeah. But appreciate the oneness of us. And know that there is that oneness in all of us. When we first started going down to our local homeless shelter and taking food every month, it was very interesting. And I remember one night, they didn't have a kitchen at that time, so we had to haul the food in. And one night they came, one of the managers of it came up and said, do you have enough food? This fellow has just come in. We don't have room for him to stay, but it'd be really nice if you could feed him. And I said, oh yeah, sure, we can feed him. And he was a tall, nice-looking young man. And I took food over and he started just shoving it in. And I went, slow down, you're gonna get sick. And he said, well, I haven't eaten in about 2 days. And I was, slow down. And then he said to me, as I'm kneeling down right next to him, please slow down, you're gonna be sick. He says, it's just so much better than prison food. And my reaction, I tried not to do it physically, but my reaction was like, and I thought, why did I have that? Just because he said he'd been in prison. When I saw him at first, I thought he's a nice-looking young man. He was hungry. But as soon as I heard that, it was a... When I notice those things about myself, then I can think, okay, now you can change that. You don't have to be afraid of everyone. You don't have to think the worst before it happens. Some of you may have, we had a monk in Hollywood, Swami what was his name? Atma Tattwananda. He was never known as that. He was always known as Shiva. And Shiva one night was coming home from Hollywood and Vine up to the monastery at the top of the hill. Hollywood at that time, this was years and years ago, and I think it goes up socially and it goes way down socially. It's really dangerous and then it's really not. And that night it was dangerous and he was mugged. And he was beaten up. And he kept saying, but the thing that I wanted to point out, Shiva had been a monk for 40 years, and he never once got mad. He said, he kept saying to the fellows that were doing it, brother, I don't have any money. You can have anything that I have, but I don't have any money. But he never once got angry at them. Ever. So, to me that was a great inspiration to show how years of spiritual practice can change your mindset to the point where you still see that it's another human being just like you who is in need. We didn't like the fact that he'd been beaten up, but it's also like that story, is it in the gospel, of the monk who was a Buddhist monk who was beaten up and left on the roadside, and his brothers came down to get him. And they started feeding him milk. And they said, "Brother, who did this to you? Who did this?" And he says, "The same one who is pouring milk into my mouth." That's what faith, self-surrender, gratitude for the grace of God can give us. It's for our personal improvement. It's not for changing the world. It's actually a kind of selfish endeavor at first, because the only person we can change is ourselves. We can't change anyone else. We can try and we can be frustrated for life, but we have to work on ourselves and accept everyone else who is in our life. We don't have to keep them in our life if it's toxic, but we accept them for what they are. It's like saluting the tiger god from a distance. You salute the god within, but you don't have to be in the same nest with them. You acknowledge the fact, but all of those things are it's all to help us to expand our own personal being, to make us aware of our divinity. And in being aware of your divinity, it expands. You are part of the whole. Holy Mother, there is no stranger. No one is a stranger in the world, my child. And you say this when you say your prayers, I think. I know you say Holy Mother's last statement, but she said, no one is a stranger. And it's only the contraction of our heart that makes us look at people as strangers. As soon as our heart has grown large, it's fine. There really are no strangers in this world. Should I read you a couple more quotes? If I can find them. Just 1 second. Okay, this is William James. As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter the words, but to live by them. And that was John F. Kennedy, who was killed. William James says the deepest craving of human nature is the need to be appreciated. Now Swamiji and Thakur say, we disassociate from the appreciation, but people still need to be appreciated. They like to be acknowledged as another human being, which is appreciation. Just acknowledging them as a person. I know at one time we were trying to, we have a lot of homeless in Santa Barbara. It's a good place to be homeless. The weather's good. You don't get too cold at night. There's always a place to get food. And so they're on all the streets. And I thought, well, I started saying hello to them, just because I thought it's good to acknowledge that they're there. I don't give them money because usually all they want is alcohol or drugs. But I've noticed that after a while oh, hi, how are you? One of our devotees takes care of them. She's a registered nurse and she works for the hospital. And her job is to go down to the local shelter and take care of them. We were both getting our cars oil changes. And I said, I have to go to the Pennywise market, which is the local Indian market. And she said, you're going there? That corner is where they do all the drug deals. And I said, well, we can't get the spices anywhere else. So we were going there, this big guy, and she says, uh-oh, he's going to run over here and show me the cut on his foot. But it was, she's friends with all of these people because she takes care of them. And I thought, yeah, okay. She's one of our Buddhist members. As I said, a third of our congregation in Santa Barbara are Buddhists. And they have told us, I'm a Buddhist. And we go, okay. And then a little later, well, we're Buddhists, but you're our Sangha. And we go, okay, that suits us. We don't have any Buddhist groups in Santa Barbara, so sure, come do your volunteer work here. So, as I say, Alice Walker says, wherever I have knocked, a door has opened. Wherever I have wandered, a path has appeared. Now, I think we find that if we allow it to happen. Here's another, this one's funny. Gratitude is the sum of great plus attitude. So, so, as I said, the thing about gratitude is that it doesn't run out. It only keeps giving more back to you. And I, for a change, have gone over time. So I will say, any questions or answers? I can take answers from you too, you know. Are there any questions? I know you're all going to go home and write down a diary, start a gratitude diary, or post pictures that make you happy on the fridge. One of the nuns in San Francisco sends us jokes from the New Yorker, and one of them that I posted was the man sitting on the doctor's examination table, and the doctor is saying, well, Mr. Jones, I don't think a long life is in your favor. I had it posted, and Swami Sarvadevananda walked up and he looked at it. He says, wow, you keep this on the fridge? And I went, oh yeah. Oh yeah. No questions? Tea time? I know. Otherwise, I'll read you more quotes. Oh, no, not that. Swami Sohananda used to collect quotes. Swami Manishananda, up in Seattle, an American monk, I went up to see him and he said, would you like to see my catalog of quotes? And I said, oh, yeah. I don't know, does anyone else do that? Little things that inspire them as they read it. I've got ones from all over, including novels that I've read. Yeah. There's a little line in there that will suddenly inspire you and make you think of God, and you think, one of my favorites from somewhere was, a gossip, this is not the exact quote, but you know how people spread gossip. And it said, a gossip is someone who wants to be the first, that feeds their ego by being the first to spread the news, whether it's accurate or not. And I thought, yeah, there are people who have to say something, have to get things out before they even know the whole story, and then pretty soon you've got some chaos. You have chaos. Okay.
Any of you have questions? Abhijit will bring the mic to you.
Thank you, Mataji. So I had two questions for you. One based on the lecture today, and one I wanted to ask you on Friday, like when you're recounting your experiences with different Swamijis.
Okay.
So the first one about today is, I remember like when I probably came a little late, but you're talking about detachment. So how do you practice detachment and make sure that you do not develop new karma, especially with people who are closest to you? And sometimes this could be people who are part of your family. Sometimes it could be your close friends. It could be your brothers, sisters, parents, children, whatever. And how do you always detach yourself? Like you do the karma and then you come out. And this is a question, of course, like we've discussed, I'm sure.
Yeah, detachment.
Yeah. And the other question I had was, like you were talking about all your experiences with the different Swamis, whether in India or in America. And I wanted to ask you that day, but I didn't get time. Is that amongst all the Swamis you met, who was the best cook?
I would say at one point Swami Bhaskarananda. He used to always cook something for us when we would go visit him. Swami Prabhavananda didn't cook by the time I knew him. And Swami Vivedishananda did not cook. The lady, Helen did all the cooking at the center. Swami Asheshananda made wonderful, tasty pies if you didn't burn it. And even then it was tasty. Swami Swahananda couldn't boil a pan of water to make a cup of tea. So there was nothing there to, no striving. Swami Shraddhananda was a great appreciator of good food. I don't know whether he could cook or not. Swami Bhavyananda told me he could teach me how to make chapatis, but he never did. He didn't come back, he died. He was on a visit from London. Swami Ritajananda also told me he would teach me how to make rasam, but I never saw him again. He got sick when he was in Santa Barbara, and I said, I don't know what to fix for you. If you were not vegetarian, I would fix chicken soup, because that makes everyone well. And he said, rasam is our chicken soup. I said, okay, but I don't know how to make it. Which other ones? Swami Chaitanyananda, I've never tasted anything he's cooked either. Which other ones did I know? And most of them I never. The only one that that cooked for us whenever we went was in the United States was Bhaskarananda, and he always made some dish. Saten Maharaj in Varanasi cooked for us when we were there, and he was a good cook. He cooked special dishes because he had been very close to Bharata Prana when they had been their first trip to India in 1949. I don't remember any of the other Swamis cooking for us. They passed it off to us as soon as they saw, you cook.
I can tell. One very nice cook was Swami Shantarupananda, the successor of Swami Asheshanandaji. He was an excellent cook, but he passed away. One who is alive and cooks very delicious food is Swami Baneshananda of Germany. He does wonderful cooking.
I've not tasted either of their food. And the other question had detachment with family members. I find the easiest way is that the passages in the Upanishad, you do not attach to the person, to the physical person. You attach to the God within. Because detachment is not indifference. And you can tell the difference between indifference and detachment. Swamiji, as he said, was attached. You've read his letters. If you read the complete works in his letters to the families that he stayed with in this country, he treated them as though they were his very own sisters and his very own mother. And he was loving to them. But I don't, when we say detached, he knew that their physical body was going. What he was attached to was their divinity. Now he was dealing with, he asked the young girls, do you have a boyfriend yet? When you wish them well on their marriages, talked to them about all the regular family life, treated them with great concern and love. And if you read some of the letters, I can't remember which volume they're in. I always get confused. But yeah, we had Tontine was his great friend, Josephine MacLeod, and her niece lived across the street from us. And she had actually met Swamiji and sat on his lap when she was 3 years old. And she said all she remembered was how much fun they had at Ridgely, because he would pay them pennies to go on races. And whoever won the race would get the penny when they came back to him. You can have involvement and joy and still be detached. There's that story in the gospel where the man is out in the farm and they come out to him, they say his only son has died. And he comes back to the house and he sheds no tears. And his wife is just, what is wrong? Our only son has died and you are indifferent. You do not care. And he said, last night I dreamt I was a king and I had 8 sons. When I woke up this morning, they were gone. Now which one should I cry for? Because he had truly recognized that this life too is a dream. And the things that are in it are not lasting, they're not eternal. But as I say, detachment is not indifference. Indifference shows a lack of caring. Detachment, you can love and care, but not control. Detachment, you do not try to control the other person or your family. You love them as they are and let them develop as they develop. You have a duty as a parent to steer the kids on the right path, and you hope it works. But you can't guarantee it, and you can't guarantee that they're going to do what you think they should do, because they have their own dharma. They have their own path. You do it with love and with great care, but you let go when they go their own way. You still love them, but you let them go the way they're going. So I would say that's the difference between how to deal with attachment and detachment in a family. We don't try and control. Attachment doesn't mean control. Attachment means love. Any other question? Okay, I'm going to...
There's a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. First of of all, Mataji, I just want to start off with expressing my... Oh, sorry.
I think you're afraid of it just like I am.
Kind of. Expressing my deepest gratitude to you. That's the topic we are talking about now, for the wonderful lectures and the sessions that we had. I have a lot of things roaming around in my mind now. I don't know what's going to come out, but I think everybody, I can talk on behalf of everybody. I think everybody has fallen in love with you in the last...
Oh dear, it's mutual.
Like, in the last 2 days, and as I said, it's not a question, it's more of a comment that I want to make. My grace is there for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
It's for us to see and recognize that. And what you have explained over the course of the last 2 days is there's many different paths, many different ways of us expressing and understanding that available divinity and the divine nature of all of us. Many different ways. Gratitude, as you mentioned, is the easiest and the most easiest path for people like us, like novices like me, can find it very easy to relate to that. And we have a voluminous amount of philosophies and scriptures and all of that. I don't know even if I can finish that off in my entire lifetime if I read it. I started reading a little bit of it. I don't know if I can finish it off, but I think the very fact that I can recognize the divinity in people, divinity around us, and that is achievable.
It is.
It is achievable.
Yeah, it is achievable.
And you have showed us the path and given us some tips on how we can at least move ourselves up a ladder a little bit, step by step. That's what you have talked about, right? It's just been beautiful the way you have expressed it. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think Manish did some of the words that I was going to say, but I'll repeat it. It's been an amazing retreat, Mataji, and you shared many ideas on topics that are very important to our spiritual life and progress. On faith, we had utmost faith that we were going to hear some spiritual words from our spiritual masters, and we were not disappointed. We made the effort to get here and come here to the center to listen to the talks, absorb the spiritual teachings. Now it's up to us to contemplate on the teachings and practice them. The grace, this was made possible by the divine grace that continues to flow, and our heartfelt gratitude to you, Mataji, for sharing the thoughts which will help us in our spiritual journey. And it also certainly quenched the thirst of our spiritual aspirants. A big thank you to all the volunteers who have helped us, who have worked here tirelessly with the microphones and also feeding all of us. And also thank you to Swami for making all the arrangements to make this retreat possible. Now we will be having a photo session right here, followed by an opportunity to do pranam to Mataji outside, and then you can continue upstairs to have tea. Thank you.
The peacocks are ready for the opening of tea.
Can you put the 3 chairs here?